Hey guys, so it's been a minute, hence why the facial hair. So I've been trying to keep my patience over the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have tried to remind myself that many have died. I am trying to remind myself that COVID isn't over, even though I want it to be over. I mean, who wouldn't want it to be over? However, in the last 2 years, my politics, already very libertarian, have been vindicated repeatedly. They said 2 weeks to slow the spread, or to flatten the curve. And then that turned into through May, and then just the rest of the school year. From that point on, people should have pushed back much harder than they actually did. Unfortunately, they did not. And now the Salt Lake Tribune has posted an article titled, "Utah Leaders Have Surrendered to COVID Pandemic," the editorial board writes. "Cowardice and misinformation at all levels have left each one of us to fight this battle alone." For the record, I am vaccinated. I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in June 2021. And I actually regret having gotten it. You see, I had no intention of getting the vaccine because I thought, well, a lot of the people that have already gotten it are not taking the masks off. They're showing me that they don't trust the vaccine, yet they're telling me to get it. Well, I mean, if you don't trust it yourself, why are you telling me to get the vaccine then? What's the point? And it's just been frustrating the last 2 years because, I said to people all the time, I would get the vaccine if they would and by they I mean everybody who's pushing for the vaccine would just go away. They'd stop talking and just go away. Obviously, that was not going to happen, but the COVID pandemic burnout was so bad. So I got the vaccine only in June 2021. I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And the only thing that happened to me was, I think it was like a day or two of like body aches, really bad body aches. And after that, I was fine. Nothing bad happened after that. But the thing that has been frustrating is understanding that a lot of the things that have happened are permanent due to the COVID pandemic. Politicians from the most local level to the federal level are going to grab for power that they're never going to give back. And the only way that you're going to have it taken back is if those people are removed from power, of course, through elections. I'm not calling for insurrection or rebellion or sedition, even though insurrection, rebellion, and sedition is how people overthrow tyrannical governments. I'm just saying that we can use the ballot box to push for a change. But that's not enough in and of itself. You need to have constitutional amendments approved and ratified that will make it illegal for public health officials to have such broad powers that are not checked. For example, if I had a magic wand and could approve of a constitutional amendment in 5 seconds, the Constitution would be amended so that there would be no vaccine or mask mandates that could be imposed by any government under the United States. Any public health official or any government official who attempted to impose one would be removed from their job immediately. They would be stripped of their ability to vote. They would be made a convicted felon. And they would spend the rest of their lives with no pension. They'd be spending the rest of their lives without any possibility of returning to government. They would have disqualification hang over their head. Now, some of you might be thinking that's a little heavy-handed, but sometimes you have to use brute political force against politicians. And by political force, I mean you never vote for those people again, you make it very clear that their days are numbered, and you have to mean it. You can't vote for them because, well, their potential successor could be worse because you don't agree with them on everything. For example, if I had it my way, former Governor Gary Herbert, would have been removed from office for implementing a mask mandate. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives state or local governments the right to mandate a vaccine. I'm not saying there's anything in the vaccine that we need to be worried about, but I think that no company who makes a vaccine should be allowed to hide any of the side effects or any information that could be unfavorable towards the vaccine. That should not be hidden for 75 years or until the 2070s. That should be illegal. As for private businesses mandating vaccine passports, simply put, boycott them till they got a business. Anyone mandating that you prove you're vaccinated or that mandating that you wear a mask, they have the right to implement that policy, as they are not the government and they don't have legal authority in the sense that you have to do it, but they should be able to refuse you service. If it were up to me, every business would be given the option or the choice of whether or not they implement a mask mandate or a vaccine passport requirement. But I would encourage people to boycott them because it's no one's business if you've been vaccinated or not. I don't feel bad for those who are unvaccinated. They've made their choice and they've made it clear they're prepared to live with it. I'm not going to want them to die. I want them to live. But if they die, well, they die. I mean, that's how most of them literally say it. I know a woman who I used to work with at my job, and she says, if I die, I die. And, I say, well, more power to you. So currently in this picture you have Republican Governor Spencer Cox, and to his left, Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. That one fluttering noise you hear coming from the direction of the Capitol building is the sound of the state of Utah waving the white flag of surrender in the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. It's tragic, disgraceful, and there is lots of blame to go around. Governor Spencer Cox and the new state epidemiologist, Dr. Leisha Nolan, let it be officially known Friday morning that there are so few tests available in the state and so many people who reasonably fear they have contracted the disease that anyone who is feeling the kind of symptoms associated with the disease should just assume they are infected and stay home. Now, I would say that that is ridiculous. As to why the governor, why the state of Utah has so few COVID tests available, the governor should answer that question as to why that is the case. The elderly and those with underlying conditions are still encouraged to test, but the hope that the state's schools could remain open with the test-stay policy, show a negative test and go to class, show positive or refuse and go home, can only be dashed when there are no tests to be had. Now, I say, yes, that is disgraceful. Why are there so few tests? I will agree with the writers here that that is insane how that happens. The Salt Lake County Council came within a single vote Thursday of overturning the county health department's mask mandate, which would have been tragic. Simply put, if you are in a public place, like a municipally owned or government-owned building, and they mandate a mask, I'd say that, yeah, they would have the right to tell you to mask up or leave. And then, I'm not a huge proponent of democracy. I believe that voting can be helpful, but it isn't the only way to make change. So again, I would say that it needs to be a litmus test in this country. If you are going to run for office during the COVID pandemic, whose side are you going to take? Those who will grab power and hold on to it for dear life, or those who will understand that there are limits to power, as there needs to be. The Davis School District was so flustered by the lack of test kits that it momentarily told students who had tested positive for the virus to come to school anyway, a mistake rectified within a few hours. Oh yeah, Lyndon Johnson died 49 years ago today. He was a very racist person. All of this news is shocking, even as it is not at all surprising. For more than 2 years now, officials at all levels and in all branches of our government have missed chance after chance to get a handle on this rapidly spreading and rapidly evolving virus. Well, Joe Biden, President of the United States, allowed himself to make a gaffe when he was on tape saying there is no federal solution to the pandemic, out of context or not. Why would you even word it that way if that is not what you're saying and that's not what you're meaning? Rather than call for the kind of... Sorry, this is just beyond the pale ridiculous. Water. The kind of patriotic coming together that Americans responded to after Pearl Harbor and 9/11, we were assured that it was not a real problem, that it would magically disappear, even that it was all a hoax, a plot to extend the power of the federal government and or further enrich Big Pharma. First off, people have very unfavorable views towards Big Pharma, and they do for a reason. First off, if you are going to create a vaccine, you should not be allowed to hide any information about the vaccine. None. And it cannot be hidden for decades on end. No, if you're not willing to reveal it right as the vaccine is being created and administered, I would say the person who is trying to hide that information should be arrested and should be given the harshest sentence allowed by the 8th Amendment to the Constitution. Because if you're going to be telling people that they should be getting a vaccine, you cannot be and should not be allowed to hide a single piece of information, favorable or not, about the vaccine. How else do you expect people to react when they find out that any really bad side effects or anything that could be unfavorable but truthful about the vaccine must be hidden for decades? How else do you expect people to react? Also, as for a plot to extend the power of the federal government, I don't believe it was a hoax. And as for a plot to extend the power of the federal government, well, that's how they saw it. They saw it as a perfect opportunity to grab power and hold on to it forever. That's why I suggested at the beginning of this that there needs to be state constitutional amendments, or even better, a federal constitutional amendment that would rip those powers away from the states so that they cannot mandate lockdowns or things like that. I mean, you look at what's happening in Australia, their prime minister is a fascist, and if anyone deserves to be overthrown, it is Scott Morrison of Australia. He would deserve an insurrection. Government officials, mostly but not exclusively Republicans, were apparently determined not to be caught governing in the face of this challenge. Any move or recommendation to mask up or, when safe and effective vaccines became available, to make vaccination a requirement of admission to public places and society in general was shouted down as an unwarranted imposition on individual freedoms, and that is exactly what you're proposing is. Unwarranted imposition on individual freedoms. I know the word freedom and liberty are very generic and overused, but here's the deal. In the context of government powers, they don't have the constitutional powers, nor do they even have the moral authority to even ask any of us to do this. I understand that sacrifice is something we all have to do at some point during our lives. That's natural. That happens all the time. And I can accept that. Sacrifices and adaptability are necessary for most situations. However, this cannot be something that lasts for years on end. For any politician worth their salt, they need to make 2022 the year in which this nonsense of mandates, to make it history, to repeal it, to defund it, to block it, to overturn it. And it does not matter how much brute political force you use. In fact, there's probably no way you could use too much of it. Instead, we were left to listen to various forms of foolishness and misinformation, promises of being rescued by everything from a bleach cocktail to horse dewormers to most recently drinking our own urine. Now, I will say this. You'd have to be a complete fool to drink bleach, inject yourself with horse dewormers. I don't even remember what it was specifically called, but I know what they're talking about. Ivermectin, I think? I can't remember. And if you drink your own urine, you are a disturbed individual. I would rather die than ever do that. So we are all free, We are free, all right? Free to fend for ourselves, to watch our children lose weeks, months, or more of their precious educational opportunities. That's what's been happening since people have been forced to stay home and not go to school in person. The supermajority of my time in public education was spent going to school in person, and it was very aggravating, to say the least, that just as we're about to wrap it all up, we had to go home and stay home. In my case, I was actually supposed to go to state. I had won a debate tournament on my home turf, which is always awesome. We were supposed to go to St. George, going to state, and then they say, go home for 2 weeks. Okay, well, 2 weeks isn't too much. And then they say, okay, through April, and maybe even a little bit into May, and then by that time it was pretty obvious it was going to be the rest of the school year. Already, many weeks, months, and more of educational opportunities were squandered because people got it wrong. If I had it my way, we would have forcefully kept the schools open. Yeah, people would have been required to wear masks in the school, or they could stay home. I want to make this clear. I am a strong advocate for school choice, and I believe parents need to be more and more involved in their kids' education. They don't even realize the kind of power that they could flex because they don't get involved. They think it's just a daycare center. To wonder whether it is safe to go to work or to the store or to sporting events, to see businesses closed for want of employees or lack of customers. Here's the deal. From June till December, I didn't wear a mask once. After I got the vaccine, I stopped wearing the mask unless it was at a place that actually required it, which was frustrating because I had the card and, well, hey, if you're telling me that this is the way we get back to normal or to a post-COVID normal, fine, but you actually have to hold up your end of the bargain. You have no idea how close I was to actually buying a fake COVID passport to get around all of this. I was within a hair of actually buying one because, you know what, at this point I'm not worried. If I got COVID tomorrow and died, I would not care. Because it has been extremely infuriating, the fact that this is how it's been for over 2 years. And I know that this is going to sound extreme and irrational, but what we just need to do is use as much brute political force as possible and to tell the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and to tell every politician pushing a mask mandate, vaccine mandate, and a lockdown order that the answer is no, and that they should be removed from office via the ballot box or impeachment. Honestly, I'd prefer impeachment. That they be ineligible to hold any office under the United States. The only thing they'd be allowed to keep is their citizenship. They would lose their pension. They would spend, I would say, at least 5 years in prison. And at that point, once they leave, they would have to write a letter admitting that they were wrong and that they had abused their powers. If they don't write that letter, simply put, they would just move on. But if they have learned anything, but they never have. Governor Cox and others recently have correctly said that the best tool for fighting the spread of the virus, individually and collectively, was to get 2, then 3 doses of the vaccine. Here's the deal. I'm not getting one more jab. I only got one, and that's it. If that is not enough, if my actions are not enough to move on from this pandemic, then you know what? It doesn't matter anymore. You know why? Because I go to my job every day, right? I go to my job, And when we're cleaning up for the day to go home, we have to COVID clean. We have to wear the masks. The mandate for the store was reinstated on January 3rd, 2022, and it has just been laughable to see that, first off, people don't even wear the masks correctly, number one. Number two, we don't even COVID clean every day. We don't properly socially distance. And yet we're supposed to all pretend that this virus is so bad. Because people are showing how much they don't care. They are showing how they don't take it seriously. And every time you see a politician who goes and they violate their own COVID protocols, you know that they aren't worth taking seriously. And frankly, this has got to stop. We need to hound them out of office. And like I said earlier, we absolutely need to make it a litmus test. If you want to get our votes, and by our I mean anyone who respects individual liberties, you have to be unequivocally opposed to all of these mandates, and I mean all of them. Now, I would not agree with an executive order being used to prohibit businesses from issuing mask mandates or vaccine passports, because number one, executive orders are not legislation, and I would say that would be an abuse of power. I would say that any businesses that implement those should be boycotted. And in the context of any, for example, if a company, like a vending company, requires a mask mandate, then the government buildings that have those vending machines should stop using them. And we just keep this going until they finally say, all right, we'll back off. Because at this point, everyone has shown that they don't even believe the virus is that bad. They have shown repeatedly they don't care. And frankly, it's time to move on. We have wasted enough of our lives on this. You know, if I had been alive during the Spanish flu, during the 6th and 7th years of the Woodrow Wilson administration, 6th, 7th, and 8th years, yeah, they were wearing masks at the time, and I would have as well, and I would have gotten a vaccine. And as soon as I got the vaccine, the mask goes off, and any single person who tells me to put on a mask in the public square, not in a business, but just like on the sidewalk, I'm going to tell them respectfully as I can, to leave me alone. That if they're not, 6 feet away from me, they're proving to me that they are not taking it seriously. You can call it right-wing, you can call it conservative, you can call it extreme, whatever you want. But it does not fundamentally matter anymore. But Governor Cox and so many others have not carried the courage to their convictions. Governor Cox, state legislative leaders, and our congressional delegation and Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes have so proudly stood against the kind of vaccine mandates that and this is where it gets really, this is why I will never subscribe to the Salt Lake Tribune, have so proudly stood against the kind of vaccine mandates that civilized society has used for generations to effectively wipe out everything from polio to, I don't want to mispronounce words here, so diphtheria, whatever, to the measles. President Joe Biden tried to pull a couple of useful levers by ordering vaccine mandates for healthcare workers and vaccine or test rules for workplaces of more than 100 employees. At my job, we don't have 100 employees. I don't know the precise number, but it could not be any higher than 40. Heck, it probably is not even anywhere near higher than 30. But they were telling us that if this goes into effect, we will abide by it anyway. And I don't pray. I don't pray. I would have prayed, though, that a federal judge or the Supreme Court would have invalidated it as unconstitutional. The CDC does not have the power to mandate that we have masks or vaccine or test rules. They don't have that power. This is one of the few things that drives me up the wall about certain government agencies. is that they don't recognize or they don't care that there are limits on what they can do. Not that President Biden is blameless and... Wait. Okay. I forgot to read the rest of the sentence. The U.S. Supreme Court this week upheld the former while quashing the latter, foolishly holding that a communicable disease is not a workplace hazard. I will say it is a workplace hazard. I'm not going to disagree on that. It's still not an excuse to have the government ruin people's lives by having these mandates and shifting the goalposts, saying now you have to get another one in order to get your life back. Vaccination alone wasn't going to get you out of the pandemic. Testing, vaccine your way out of this wasn't going to work. Testing was important too. And because the President of the United States decided he was going to cut corners and not test as well, he now has Omicron and Delta variants to blame. And by the way, every time they come up with a new name of a variant, I roll my eyes. I could not care less if there's like 55 million variants. I still throw my hands up and say I don't care. I stopped caring as soon as there's 500,000 people died from COVID because it was very clear that they were just going to keep using the numbers to try to guilt you or pressure you or bully you or slander you or threaten you to mask up and get the vaccine. I've worn a mask since 2020. I have socially distanced. I have done my part for long enough. And if that's not enough, then you know what? It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. And frankly, I sincerely hope the President of the United States is defeated for his bid for a second term in 2024. Not that President Biden is blameless in all of this. Seeing the obvious reluctance of so many people to get or to require vaccinations has now only moved him to push to make tests and the most effective kind of masks available to everyone. When you're saying that this is the most deadly virus ever, or one of the most deadly, and you're giving me just a cloth mask, I'm going to laugh at you. An N95 mask from the outset would have been a much better choice. I have worn N95 masks for unrelated things. And the first time I ever wore a mask was after a relative of mine died, and we were cleaning out his closet, and there was dust so heavy, we thought, okay, we really need to get the masks because this dust could really mess us up. So we put on these heavy masks, and we're cleaning it, and nothing happened to us. We were fine. I would have taken N95 masks over cloth masks any day of the week. It's the right thing to do, but months late. Utah House Speaker Brad Wilson offered an absurd and all too typical defense of the government's failure to act. This pandemic has proven to be anything but predictable, Wilson said. We all recognize it so we need to be very flexible and adaptable as we move through this current wave. But the Omicron, whatever, I call it the Bakugan or Pokemon virus or variant. But the Omicron variant now rippling through humanity was predicted. There is consensus among epidemiologists long before COVID that viruses tend to mutate into less potent but more easily transmissible variants, which is exactly what happened. And the challenge is the same as it was with Alpha and Delta. Most people weather it okay, but the cases are serious enough, still enough, to overwhelm hospitals. We might have headed off Omicron with a herd immunity level of vaccinations, but that would have required a vaccination mandate, and which our leaders refused, because they knew that was an abuse of power to force people to get the vaccine, to require it. For example, people having to choose whether they keep their job or avoid a vaccine. That is disgraceful. Simply put, that's why I support boycotting any and all businesses that require, no jab, no job. That would be, because you can't praise healthcare workers in 2020 saying that there are heroes, healthcare heroes, and then fire them because they themselves declined to get the vaccine. I would love to know what their reason is. I would love to actually have a conversation with them, but you can't say that they're heroes 1 minute and then call them evil, among other things, the moment they decide that they're not going to get the vaccine themselves. Instead, we get, no one could have seen this coming. That is patently untrue. They were told what to do and they refused. Were Utah a truly civilized place, the governor's next move would be to find a way to mandate the kind of mass vaccination campaign we should have launched a year ago, going as far as to deploy, and this is actually where it gets really bad. And this is why you would see people armed with AR-15s. If you want to ask people, why would you need an AR-15? This is why. Were Utah a truly civilized place, the governor's next move would be to find a way to mandate the kind of mass vaccination campaign we should have launched a year ago, going as far as to deploy the National Guard to ensure that people without proof of vaccination would not be allowed, well, anywhere. But it may be too late for that, politically and medically. First off, anyone in the National Guard who would have gone along with this would deserve prison time, would have deserved everything they would get. That would be an abuse of power if the governor deployed the National Guard to make sure that unvaccinated people or those without proof would not be allowed to go anywhere. I would say he needs to be impeached or overthrown. And anyone who endorses this at the Salt Lake Tribune, which would be all of them, should be ashamed of themselves. In the meantime, get vaccinated. If you're sick, stay home and let your elected officials at all levels know that you expected them to lead us out of this mess, not stand by and meekly express concern. This is exactly why we need to find a way to move on. And I'm going to read a few of the comments. Victor, I'm not even pronouncing your last name. I don't like to mispronounce people's last names. Never before in our history has anyone suggested that the military be deployed within our country to enforce, wrong way to spell it, the vaccine mandate, and then suggest you won't be allowed to go anywhere if you refuse a vaccine. Salt Lake Editorial Board, this is what they do in communist countries. This is a shocking editorial coming from a newspaper in a country that cherishes freedom. Well, actually, this country really doesn't cherish freedom very much. We have the Patriot Act, we have gun control, we have all sorts of legislation that has been passed. Many states are injecting their views on many social issues into the law. Roe versus Wade exists. I mean, there's so many examples of where the government doesn't cherish freedom at all. It's ridiculous. I'm going to only read 3 more. There is no containing Omicron. This editorial board article is a great example of Monday morning quarterbacking. We are conflating tracking the disease with stopping the disease. We have no way to slow its spread. All of my family has 3 mRNA injections, and Omicron blew through our family while on vacation. We have no idea how that happened. Israel has 4 vaccines in the population, and Omicron blew right through the 4 injections. So martial law style response is their answer to a disease that has an almost 100% survival rate. I think that this response is from people living in their own version of reality that is caused by social media and Google algorithms that reinforce what you read and then feed you more of it, giving you a false sense of how the world is. We all have a manipulated sense of the world. Yes, you, even me. Yes, I fully agree. Well, I mostly agree. No, I fully agree. How embarrassing it is to live here. We're the top. We are in the top 5 states as far as transmission. They said out on the local news tonight. Gee whiz, why? Well, they had a doctor explain as patiently as he could what we all, those with brains, know. Half the state wants to get COVID repeatedly and spread it. They want to keep it mutating. They want kids to miss out on school, pregnant moms to be in danger of having stillbirths. They want to promote misinformation and lies because they are in fact idiots who have no desire to learn science or social responsibility. It gives them something to do. If it were an actual war, we now know who you could not count on to help out, even by doing something simple as wearing a mask or getting a free, safe vaccine. Here's the deal, Riz. I don't know about the rest of the state of Utah, but I don't want to get COVID repeatedly and spread it. I don't want to keep it mutating. I don't want kids to miss out on school. That's what the pro-mandate and lockdown people want. And being pro-life, I don't want pregnant moms to be in danger of having stillbirths. I know a handful of women who are pregnant, and I hope that their pregnancies end well and successfully, with the child being born and with them surviving the pregnancy, of course. It's rare that they don't, but, you gotta cross your T's, dot your I's, right? As for misinformation and lies, first off, Dr. Fauci, you guys believe him no matter what he says. He said, don't wear the mask, then he says, wear the mask. Multiple instances of him contradicting himself, and frankly, Dr. Fauci should be fired. I mean, we should have some kind of ability to force out these establishment cronies. They should not be in the federal government since the administration of Lyndon B. Johnson. Dr. Fauci has been in the government since the Lyndon Johnson administration. As for learning science and social responsibility, I'm for all of those things. What we're saying is that you don't have the right or the moral authority or the power to force us to go along with what you're asking. And no matter how much verbal abuse you throw our way, we're not going to comply. I regret getting the vaccine, and I have accepted that I had allowed myself the COVID burnout to push me against one of my core principles. I will live with that. Now, as for Larry Ross. Yes, just another article attaching division and hatred of the vaccine. Well done, Trib. Pat yourself on the back. Among all the vaccines I've known in my life, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, chickenpox, hepatitis, meningitis, tuberculosis, flu, and pneumonia, I've never seen a vaccine that forced people to wear a mask and maintain their social distance even after being fully vaccinated. I've never witnessed a vaccine that spreads the virus even after vaccination, even after 3 shots. I've never seen widespread rewards and incentives to get vaccinated. I mean, they were saying, get a free donut if you get the vaccine. We want you to stay healthy and not die from COVID, but we're going to give you something that could give you diabetes. I never saw a demonization and discrimination against those who didn't want a vaccine. I've never seen a vaccine that threatens relationships between family, colleagues, and friends. I've never seen a vaccine used to threaten livelihoods or school. I've never seen a vaccine that would allow a child to override parental consent. The current vaccine does all the things except immunization. We still need a booster dose after we're fully vaccinated, and we still need to get a negative test after we're fully vaccinated, and we still need to wear a mask and face other restrictions after we are fully vaccinated and still be hospitalized after we've been fully vaccinated. I've never seen a scenario where total strangers are trying to take control of other people and their children's bodily sovereignty. Strangers with financial gains to be made and career advances to be had are making their move to remove us from the role of ultimate decision maker over our own health choices. As a country and American citizens, we are collectively the lesser for this. Well, okay, I'm just going to go with the last few comments. You should feel very lucky you have not lived through... By the way, I would just like to say that Larry Ross is my hero. You should feel very lucky you have not lived through many novel pandemics. They only come about every couple generations. Your knowledge of how a new virus does its business is duly noted. No, I can't say I find anything objectionable with what Larry Ross says. The COVIDiots who believe this until the end of time, that we must keep doing this till the end of time, they need to be removed from power and kept as far away from power as possible. You have also never seen the inside of a science textbook. I'm pretty certain he has, and that's why he's saying what he's saying. Most people haven't seen the inside of a textbook, science book, unless you're under the age of 30 and still in school. Then Bill Hooper says, I've seen 3 responses from Utah politicians now attacking this editorial and journalists in general. Lieutenant Governor Henderson, Senator Mike Lee, and Congressman John Curtis have put out statements with amazingly similar wording using the exact same document template for fonts and background colors. It has all the appearances of coordinated response. And what's it helped caused for the... You guys need to have better grammar. Maybe we think the death threats the Tribune staff has been getting are good. I think it's revolting and un-American. I want to say this. I condemn threatening anyone's life. You should not be sending anybody death threats. You should not be harassing members of the Tribune staff. They should be mocked ruthlessly, and they should not be allowed to forget that they have essentially called for tyranny and fascism against the people of Utah. And none of them should ever be allowed to run for office for using the military against the people of Utah. But I want to make this clear that it is not okay to threaten their lives. They are wrong, but they do not deserve death threats. Logic and Reason, which you know that's a very generic, probably Trump supporter, generic name, and they're probably a Trump supporter, going as far as to deploy the National Guard to ensure that people without proof of vaccination would not be allowed to go, well, anywhere. Wow, what else can be said? And you accuse ours of yearning for authoritarian rule. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm not saying never get a vaccine. I'm not saying that they give you weird changes to your body. What I am saying is that if you do not want to get the vaccine, that's fine. Any of the consequences that happen to you after that are completely on you. If I had it my way, anybody who wears a mask in their own car would be made fun of. Like light teasing, like, oh my gosh, this guy's probably a Democrat. But, some people wear the mask because they're self-conscious about their face. If that's really the reason, fine. You probably hate on yourself more than you should, which you shouldn't hate on yourself, but the point is, this has gotten ridiculous. We need to put a stop to this, and I truly hope, that we can never again witness what we've been witnessing since 2020, and well before that. Until next time.